Hi everyone, Zoe from the Fab Business Hub. This is episode 2 of our podcast series. So this month, as you would have seen, we are discussing everything from positive business community to market positioning to be seen from your ideal audience perspective, and also to plan or not to plan within business, which we're going to cover towards the end of September. Today we've got the amazing Mike Edwards joining us from the Northern Affinity, and we are going to base this podcast episode around community, as Michael is an amazing example of just what you can do by putting the right people in the room and surrounding yourself with that positive network and community. So, Michael, do you just want to introduce yourself and what the Northern Affinity is about, please?
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Zoe. I don't often get called amazing, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So yeah, I'm Michael Edwards. I run the Northern Affinity. So it's actually the day that we're recording this, which is actually 2 years, we've been going exactly, officially anyway. Like probably most people with the business, you do a lot of groundwork for weeks, months, and if not longer before you actually kind of go live. But we are exactly 2 years today since we started. And what we are, and you mentioned the word community there, is a business community. That's kind of, in the very briefest of terms, what the Northern Affinity is about. It's about bringing people together who like-minded people, people who are looking to collaborate, people who are looking to connect with each other, people who've got aspirations as well to maybe to grow a bit. I mean, maybe people get confused with aspirations sometimes. It doesn't mean you necessarily want to rule the world. You've just got something that you want to do in your business, and for some people that will be, multi-billion-pound business. Some people just want to replace an income, and probably most people are somewhere in between that. And that's absolutely great. But having an aspiration, and we've got these people who've kind of quite value driven, I think, as well in our group. That obviously their business is the focus of what they do, and they want to grow their business, get new customers, like all of us do. But they also kind of a wider social awareness as well. I think is a big part of our community, and I think that kind of comes back to what I mentioned earlier, the word collaboration. Because what you get them, people who think like that often work collaboratively with other people. That's just kind of the way they are. That's their values. And that's what we're about, kind of trying to enhance that. We've gone from a kind of relatively small geographic area when we first started, in and around the West Yorkshire area, to this year we've kind of expanded our locations, and where we do our meetings in South Yorkshire, Greater Manchester. So we're now covering kind of West Yorkshire, South Yorkshire, Greater Manchester, and hopefully going to expand that again as we move forward. But like I said, it's a business community, 100 odd businesses in there now, and thankfully, even through a difficult time, we've grown, which has been fantastic, and feel very lucky as well.
Yeah, amazing, and happy birthday, because it is an achievement, isn't it? And especially with what we've all been through, as well, whether it's been positive in terms of growth, whether it's been maybe a little bit turbulent, or whether it's not been too great and you're feeling like you want to kind of kickstart. And September, I always find, is like the January of the new year. It's where we can kickstart and get that kind of last quarter under his belt and really give it a good go. Guys, as you know, I don't really practice anything I don't preach. I am part of the Northern Affinity. I see that firsthand. It is very much about community, about collaboration, about having the same values. And it's amazing to see that it has grown, and that was a positive to me. And you're right, Michael, with aspirations. My business coach would tell you, when he asked me, what do I want? When we first started working together, I said, I just want to do okay. And he went, but what does doing okay mean? Do you want to have the billion-pound company? Do you want to have the workforce of 100 staff? And no, I don't. But I do want a team. I do want to put the heart of family in my team, in my community, in my network, which resonates with me with the Northern Affinity, about the collaboration, about the same values. And it's about aspiring to do the best that you can do, whatever that may be, and be supported by other people within that community.
I think as well, on that top of that, in aspirations, Zoe, I think your aspirations will change. You say that you don't want that now, but who knows where you're going to be in a year's time and things like that. We all do change. And I think one of the things I've realized especially in the last couple of years, actually, is that we all put kind of a bit of an artificial glass ceiling above our own head. And we believe that we can only go so far. And one of the things I'm keen to do is, one of the areas of that I often think is geographical, actually, and the reason why I kind of touched on it earlier, and I'll talk about it a lot, is trying to get people connecting with people outside their kind of relatively small geographic area. So someone in South Yorkshire connecting with people in Greater Manchester, because psychologically it feels like that is a growth of your business. And if you've got a new customer, for example, who's based 100 miles from where you are, that feels like a bigger win than a customer. It might be the same value, the same size, same everything, but they are next door to you. For some reason, people place a bigger value on that, probably like I said, mentally, if nothing else. And it's one of the things that we want to do in the Northern Affinity, is that connection. And the reason why we're targeting the North is that there is a wider geographic area. Let's try and build that aspirations, because like I said, maybe we just push yourself down a little bit more than we should.
No, I agree. Devil's advocate, I before the pandemic, if someone said to me what was my geographical reach, I'd be like, Yorkshire, but South Yorkshire. And I think what the opportunity has done with the pandemic and the importance of community and expanding that network is making yourself accessible to the North, whether that be West Yorkshire, South Yorkshire, North East, North West, Harrogate, York. It's all a part of that positive community, and geographical shouldn't really kind of hold us back now. And I think that's great to see that the Northern Affinity are doing that, and seeing that you are right. And I know when someone asked me, so what's the furthest client you've worked with? And I went, Brighton. And I always mention it because I'm like, I've got a client from Brighton. That never would have happened prior to the pandemic. And you do give yourself a bit more of a pat on the back when in comparison, maybe, than working with the next door neighbour. Same value, but again, giving yourself that credit that your services are now kind of nationwide in some respects, or more regional rather than local.
Absolutely. And obviously the technology that, it was there before the pandemic, but, we kind of widely use now, whether it's like Zoom, like we're on right now, or whatever platform, is there now for relationships. Okay, you might still, you might go in person and meet them and things like that, but you can maintain the relationships and you can develop the relationships by using the technology. Obviously we could have used the phone and things like that before, but things like this now is normal. We're all used to it, and we know it can work. So that just the opportunity is there now. That maybe there'll be a lot of people reluctant to use video 18 months or so ago from now, but it's just normal now, and I think that there's so many great opportunities from it.
100%. So we've kind of touched upon it a little bit already, but I think it's important for anyone watching this podcast episode back, in terms of maybe they just started out in business, or maybe they've been in business maybe a year to 2 years, and they're looking to basically use their community or use their network in a positive way. So what would you share in terms of your own experience for anyone thinking about how can I make the best use of those that are around me, with that importance of community? What advice can you give, Mike, for anyone listening to thinking how they can best use that?
It's a good question, Zoe. I think for me, so I think one of the things I've learned over the years in both kind of personal, business, and sports I've played is that we've all got a limited amount of expertise or speciality or skill, and we need other people. We need other people, because we can only do so much. We've all got something we are very good at. We've probably got a lot of things we are decent or okay at, and then we've got weaknesses, but that's okay. That's all right. I think knowing what they are is one of the biggest strengths you can have. Knowing your weakness is a massive strength. And so when you've got a good set of people around you, you know the right people to use to plug those gaps, shall we say. And I think especially when you're in a relatively early days of your business, that's absolutely vital. I mean, for a personal example, I know that visually, so design, things like that, I am absolutely useless, absolutely horrific. You know, I can use something like Canva, is a brilliant platform, you know, but I need someone to put designs in place for me, and I can drag and drop and I can do that kind of functionality stuff. But even with the templates, if I tried to change it, something like it would look terrible because that's just me. I've got no eye for that type of thing. I need people around me that can do stuff like that. I know that. Whereas maybe my strengths are more like strategy type stuff. I like working on strategic relationships, all that type of stuff. So I know where I need help. So I think for me, I know my weaknesses. And I think one of the things I often equate stuff back to sport, actually. And I always, one of my big theories on the best sports people is they know what their weaknesses are and they mitigate that, either focusing on the strengths or kind of make their weaknesses better. And I think that's just the same in business and in life, actually.
Yeah.
So for me, I think that's probably the biggest benefit is having that strong people around you. You can just, and it might sometimes just be to ask a quick question, or it might be to use their skills, whatever it might be. There's a million and one different reasons, but I think that to me is the biggest and the most important thing about having a strong community, and to use that and plug your gaps, essentially. And then the second part, I think, is kind of more that kind of peer support type stuff that you get from a good network of people around you, because it's tough, it's hard. There's good days and bad days. We all feel it some days where everything's terrible, and you just need that maybe that pickup, I think, from some other people. And I think the great thing about especially business owners and people who are entrepreneurs and set their own business, quite often they are really positive people. I think the reason they've got to where they are in terms of setting up the business, actually they're quite positive. Sometimes to the level of delusion, and I've been there myself, but that's good. I'd rather have it that way. I think it's a better way to be than the opposite. So to be around those people and just sometimes just have a conversation with them. It might be a chat about the weather. It might be a chat about the football was on TV last night, whatever, or the movies or whatever. It doesn't matter. Sometimes being around those people just gives you that pickup. Yeah, and I think that's so important. And again, kind of taking that to a next step, people understand the journey you're going through because it's similar-ish. And we're all going to do it in a different way, but it's similar-ish, so there can be that kind of empathy there. And it's the reason kind of I got to do the Northern Affinity, because I always, I've run a business before this, and I wanted, the strong network was such an important part of that. And I felt there was something missing that could be done better than maybe the traditional ways. So that's hence the reason the Northern Affinity. So I think there's a number of reasons you do it, and a number of ways of doing it. There's no right or wrong way of kind of doing that, but just be around the right people. And the right people is different for different people. So for Zoe, for you, the right people might be different for me. And like I said, it might be due to expertise, but also that kind of values thing as well. I think is really, really important. Again, there's no right or wrong values to a certain extent. There's obviously extremes of that, but generally speaking, there's, we're all slightly different, and that's okay. But people have got similar values. You can be very different personalities, but with very similar values. I think that's key. And again, know your own values, therefore you can work out other people's.
100%. I say go with your gut and with your values as well. Your values will tell you if it's the right partnership or it's the right relationship, it's the right person to be leaning on within the business kind of community side. And I think that is the importance of community, like you've mentioned, because if we look at the athlete model and the Olympics that are happening at the moment, they have a coach, but they probably have multiple coaches. For example, Tom Daly, somebody has advised him about the crochet and about finding something for him to switch off. That is so he can perform at his optimum. and not be distracted by the noise, for example. And that's the same as community. It's about having these right pillars in place to support you kind of when you need it, because it's sometimes difficult for us to pat ourselves on that back when things are going well, but also even more to pat us on the back to keep going when things might not be going so well.
Yep.
So there's no better importance for me or benefit of a positive community than asking someone their advice in terms of, what would you do? Have you been faced with this situation before? Because sometimes in business, it's a very lonely game. And we sometimes think, oh, we can't ask that question. But we can, because the right people, the right values will be more than happy to help you. Because I know we've had conversations about events before, and I always say, pick my brains. I've had conversations about connecting with people in the north before, and Mike's gone, pick my brains, because we want to support one another. And that's what a positive community and in your business can have. I believe it's about surrounding yourself, like you said, Mike, with the right values, so you have that support network.
Yeah, and I think it's important to mention on values actually is it's one of those things that's a really worthwhile exercise, really thinking about that in more detail and probably working with someone who can get those values out, because again, can you mention a coach type scenario? And it might be a coach, or it might just be just anybody. It doesn't you don't have to get a coach, you can just get a friend or something like that. But I think there's all sorts of different books and things like that about values. I think understanding what your values are is a really worthwhile time exercise, and to reevaluate them as well, because they do maybe not change, but they evolve over time. And I also mentioned we've been going 2 years Northern Affinity, and we set our values up when we first started a couple of years ago, and they are still very applicable. But actually, in a couple of weeks' time, we've got a full day in the diary for the team, and we're gonna basically explore them and say, are they still the right ones for what we do? Because the business has moved on. The values at the time were very much, should we say, customer-led values in terms of what we do for the customers. Now I've got employees now, so my values have to reflect those as well. I'm sure will come up and they'll be similar, and there'll be some things we'll keep, but we'll probably just evolve them a little bit as well. And that's an important piece of work for me when I'm speaking to people about the Northern Affinity, or just generally speaking to anyone really. To kind of keep challenging those values.
100%. And I think, yes, it might be a coach that can help you with that, but it also may be that you can lean on that positive community and that business community and ask someone their opinion. What do you think my values are? I mean, there's a lady within the Northern Affinity, and actually one of my clients called Claire from Make a Brew. She's part of the hub as well. And I know Claire's, one of her values is all about support and all about business and community and collaboration. But if she were to say to me, like many moons ago when we first started working together, Zoe, what do you think your values are? And I remember sharing that with her, and she said, do you know what I think your value is? And I said, no, out of this kind of map of words. And I said, no. And she said, impact. Because you always want to make an impact and make someone, not just in business, but personally, because I try to promote kindness through everything that I do. You want to make an impact in that person's business or in that person's circumstances. So just asking a professional opinion or opinion of someone within your community can be really, really beneficial, and a huge kind of plus of having that right community behind you, because they've got your back, haven't they?
They absolutely have. And I think one of the elements of that as well is you've got to allow yourself to be vulnerable to an extent. I think it's all very natural that feedback and people saying we sometimes only want to hear the stuff that we want to hear, and it's kind of it's just I guess reinforcing our own opinions, but you've got to be open to maybe something different. And it's not easy. I don't think anyone, first time you get any feedback that's not great, likes it. That's okay. But I think it does get easier if you kind of go with that mindset. And your values are just like that, just like every other part of your business. Be open to that. I said it's not always comfortable, but it's the only way you're going to get better. Because you can guarantee if one person tells you it, there's probably at least a number of people thinking it. And you want to, the people who tell you it are really doing you a massive favor, as long as it's done in a constructive and a positive way. Like, I know there's people who are part of the Northern Affinity who have given me constructive information back over the last couple of years, which has been massively helpful for me. Because you see your own thing, what you're doing from a certain viewpoint, and you're trying your best, and you think you're doing right, but then sometimes that different view, and having those people, because not everyone, again, kind of on the flip side of not people feeling comfortable receiving that, not that many people feel comfortable giving that sometimes as well. People are nice. Most people are nice. They don't want to. They know that they don't want to, but again, if they're done the right way. So having a few people around you who will say, actually, you need to maybe change this, or change the direction, or do something like that, is again valuable. And so kind of a bit like I guess if you're employing people, don't just have a team of yes men around you as well. Have those type of people who will tell you the home truth if you need it sometimes. And like I said, it's not easy, and I would never, I always don't like it personally, but you just have to, but it does get easier. Because I just don't, no one likes hearing things that you think you can maybe do better, but you again, we used the example earlier with sport, didn't we? In sports coaches, their coaching going to be sitting there going, tennis player, every time, great shot, well played, you've done that. They'll say, no, actually, that's not good enough. You need to change. And it's just the same for us as well. So having those people around you, again, it's important that they do it well and constructively and positively, and from the right place as well. They're doing it because they want to help you. And most people do. Most people do. Vast majority of people do.
Yeah, no, I agree. And there's that saying, isn't there? If you feel out of your comfort zone, that's kind of where the magic happens. Absolutely. So when someone gives you a critique, or gives you a suggestion, or gives you, have you tried it this way? It's about being open to that, because they're trying to help. So like one of the things when you were saying about knowing your strengths and your weaknesses, my weakness is written content because I'm dyspraxic. So me to write a social media post, there's procrastination. Me to write a blog post. For example, I was meant to write a blog post yesterday. I've got to still do it today because I'm putting it off because it's written. But I'll get to a point, and I do work with the right people and say, actually, can you do that for me? It's taken me too long procrastinating over it. I'd just rather someone else write it for me. But I've had people in my network before critique of my written, not knowing that I was dyspraxic. And I remember originally I was like, I felt quite hurt. And I remember replying to them at the beginning, 5 years ago, saying, but I'm dyspraxic.
You get quite defensive, don't you? You say it's a natural, but you get defensive, and that, that's natural. Like, it's okay, but you do get past it, don't you, eventually? Yeah.
And I remember this piece of advice, a HR client said to me, and said, how long have you known that? And I was like, pardon? She's like, how long have you known you've been dyspraxic? And I said, since I was 20 years old. And she's like, and you're now. And the point that she was getting at is how many times you're going to use that excuse, Zoe. Like, it's a weakness, do something about it to represent yourself better. And now I do. So again, that comment, that change felt uncomfortable, but it was done with the best intentions. She's a client, like, she's not going to be intentionally mean. And she was a part of my business community and my network before she became a client. And she became a client after she made that comment. So it obviously didn't hinder anything, and it's always done from the good place. So 100%, I think that's another key benefit, isn't it? Just having that sound advice and getting that constructive feedback.
It's a bit like there's plenty of quotes and things like that from really famous entrepreneurs about, from the employee side, to basically get the best people in to do the job, and get them to tell you what to do. I think there's a Richard Branson quote on that, things like that, and they're absolutely right. But you can equate that to your community, especially when if you're starting off or fairly new in business, and there's only maybe 1 or 2 or 3 of you in the business, and you need people around. It's exactly the same kind of principle, really. Get the best people possible around you. Okay, they might not be working for you in that employee sense, but they are kind of doing a similar job in a lot of ways. It's exactly the same concept.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing better than asking, can I just have your opinion on this, please, with someone that you trust, especially if you're on your own. That community is your team. And just being able to ask that in a safe space as well with being an entrepreneur, I think is super beneficial. So would you say there's a one top tip you could advise somebody who is thinking about how can I improve my community, my network and people around me, a top tip that would enable them to do that with, obviously, I believe your model is solely amongst other things, but the biggest thing for me is that community aspect and that value you get from the other partners, and like I say, that collaboration. So is there a top tip that you can share if someone's sat there listening to this thinking to themselves, do I have the right people around me? How could they change that?
Yeah, there's probably a couple of things on that. So the kind of main thing I would say is think long term. Don't think about, if you've got a community around you, whether you have or not now, is can I build a effective long-term relationships with these people? It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to pass business to each other or whatever. That will come generally, but think long-term is the first part. If you're thinking about how can we both get benefit in the next couple of weeks or months, you might get some of that, and that's fine, but that's all it's ever going to be. It's going to be transactional type relationship. So I think, how can you and this person essentially grow together? I think is important. But then I would go back to what I was saying earlier about this kind of, again, the kind of weaknesses and strengths of yourself and your values, and kind of think, like I said, look at your community around, maybe map it out, get a big piece of paper, put yourself in the middle, and look at what you've got around you and what gaps are missing. And you could even kind of do a bit of a traditional business organizational chart and say like marketing, sales, finance, HR, and all that kind of stuff. You could do that, and that could be part of it. But I would also add on other areas. So that might be experience in business. It might be emotional support. It might be, as I touched on earlier, the person to give you that kick up the what if you need it. So kind of look at all these areas you need to, and like I said, map it out on a piece of paper. It doesn't have to be scientific, but work out where you need. And obviously some people can fit more than one area. So, someone who's an expert in marketing might also be the person who can give you a G up when you need it, or someone in finance might be the shoulder to cry on when you need it, whatever it might be. But build that. Yeah, and you can just put it down on paper, and obviously it's not an organizational chart or anything like that, but essentially it's a similar kind of idea. Where's the strengths, where's the weaknesses in your community, and what can you build up? And then focus on developing those relationships and go into it with an open mind to building it long term. As kind of going back to my first point again, it's not so much about what you can do for each other today, tomorrow, or even next week. It's are we still going to be doing stuff for 5 years? And I look at a number of people who've joined Northern Affinity over the last year or so. People I've known for various degrees, some of them 3, 5, 10 years in other guises, in other jobs, and all that kind of thing. We've just kind of stayed in touch and built relationships, and not with any end game as such in mind. But now they've become part of the Northern Affinity, and hopefully they're getting a benefit from it. Obviously, I am, and the whole thing. So think long term and get the right people, because again, that person that you start building a relationship with today, they might be an employee of a business doing, again, marketing. In 5 years' time, they might be running a finance company. Who knows? But that doesn't really matter. It's the person behind it. Yes, the expertise is good, and you need to have those, as I touched on earlier, but kind of focus on the person. I know I've kind of answered a few different things there in one go. Hopefully that helps.
No, I think it does. And for me, a bigger top tip is exactly what you said, Michael. It's about awareness, and awareness is key. And when you know your gaps, you know where to build them gaps up in terms of your community. So you're giving yourself the best kind of landing platform to set off from. So some coaches will call it a gap analysis. I call it finding your opportunities. I know you've mentioned, Mike, about just piece of paper, put yourself in the middle and write everything around you that you have or that you need to understand where these gaps are, because it's the giver's gain, isn't it? I think with a good community, because very similar, Mike, I get a call, Zoe, do you know this person? Yes, no problem. I don't earn commission off that. That's not what I'm in my network for. It's about putting people in touch with the right people that can deliver on their promise and their service. And what will happen is they know about you, they know what you do, they know that you help them, they know that you're all about helping them move forward and helping them in their network and in their business and community. So who are they going to recommend when someone needs your services? And they are going to recommend the person that's helped them, or the person in their community that they know they can go to for that strength, to combat their weakness. So it's just super important to just, like Mike has suggested, guys, is put yourself on that piece of paper and build the community around that and build them gaps up, so you've got the best chance of moving yourself forward collectively as a business with the right people around you, because that is what the hub's about. And that's the reason why I've asked Michael, or Mike, as I call Michael, to come on today, because he's a great example of actually how he's done that for his own business by putting community at the forefront of what the Northern Affinity does. So is there anything else you'd like to finish on, Michael, with the Northern Affinity and how anyone listening to this can potentially get in touch?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, going back to your last point there, Zoe, I think it all again goes back to what we talked about right at the start, and that's values. And if you're, probably should have mentioned this, right? Is that why are you building this community? Why are you doing it? And if you are doing it, well, like I kind of touched on earlier as well, like everyone's doing it probably with an end game of growing their business. But if your values are about helping people and supporting and doing that, that will come back to you as well. You'll get the benefit. And again, going back to what I mentioned a minute ago, think long term. It might not come back to you today or next week, but 2, 3, 5, 10 years time, you will benefit from it. So yeah, in terms of the Northern Affinity, and if anyone wants to kind of find out what we do, and we do lots of different events and things like that, anyone would be very welcome to come along. We kind of a mixture of in-person and online stuff that's going on, and we'll continue to do that as we move forward. Anyone who wants to come along to those, can go onto our website. We've got an events page which has all those on there. You'd be more than welcome to come along as a guest, or if you want to just book in and have a chat with myself, I think my calendar link's on the website. If it's not, when you inquire, it comes through, or come to me on LinkedIn or whatever, and more than happy to have a chat at some point with anyone. Pretty much that's pretty much what my job is and what I do. And talk about strengths and weaknesses, that's pretty much all I do, is sit down and chat to people all day. It's a pretty cushy number really, but
no, but it is. I know you're accessible. You can find Michael Edwards on LinkedIn. You connected with me, guys, within the hub, so it'll be a second connection if you're not already connected. Or go and follow them on Instagram, Facebook. You can contact them that way, or just via the website. And your calendar link is on there, because it's how I booked about around 6 months ago with the Northern Affinity to find out more. And that, guys, was done through a recommendation within my network. So just shows you that it does work. Community does work. Positive network and community in your business will help you spring forward. So thank you for taking the time this morning on the 1st of September.
Oh, thank you for asking me.
No problem at all. This is going to be available, guys, on YouTube, on Anchor and on Spotify as normal. You can use this and share that with your network as well, but it will be available within the hub under announcements as well. So don't forget to check all the podcasts out. And just thank you again, Michael, for your time this morning.
You're most welcome. Thank you, Zoe.
Thanks, Mike.